It was 40 hours on a stretch of Highway 19 between Pleiku and Enki. The convoy had been moving for less than 4 hours when the first RPG hit the lead truck and turned it into a wall of fire across the road. Within seconds, the darkness on both sides of the highway erupted muzzle flashes from the tree line, 60 meters out on the left, 40 meters on the right. The NVA company commander had chosen his ambush site carefully. The kill zone was clean. The Americans had nowhere to go. What the NVA commander had not accounted for was the truck in the middle of the column. It was an old M45 cargo truck, modified with a steel mounting platform bolted to the bed. On top of that platform sat 4 M2 Browning heavy machine guns linked together, traversed by a single gunner behind a single set of handles. The weapon was called the M45 Quadmount. Soldiers who operated it had a simpler name, the Quad-50. In the next 4 minutes, that single weapon system fired more than 3,200 rounds into both tree lines simultaneously. The NVA company, 112 men, broke contact and pulled back into the jungle. They left behind 31 dead and an undetermined number of wounded. The ambush that should have destroyed the convoy had collapsed in less than 5 minutes. NVA commanders who later reviewed the engagement reportedly told their subordinates the same thing. Do not stop a convoy that has a Quad-50. Walk away. This is not a story the Army publicized. It wasn't a named battle. There was no press coverage, no official ceremony. The crew of that gun truck got back in their vehicle and kept driving. But the NVA knew exactly what had happened, and it changed the way they planned ambushes for the next 3 years. The M45 Quadmount was not a new weapon when it arrived in Vietnam. It had been designed in 1943 as an anti-aircraft system. 4 M2 Browning .50 caliber machine guns mounted in pairs on a rotating turret, originally built for the back of a half-track. In World War II, it had shredded low-flying German aircraft over the beaches of Normandy and the frozen roads of the Bulge. By the time Korea ended, the military had largely moved on. The jet age had made ground-based anti-aircraft guns look obsolete. The Quad-50 went into storage. Vietnam brought it back, not for aircraft, for the jungle. The problem was convoys. By 1966, American logistics in the Central Highlands and along the coastal corridors depended on truck convoys running the same roads, day after day, between the major bases. Highway 19 from Quy Nhon to Pleiku, Highway 1 along the coast, QL-14 through the highlands. The NVA and Viet Cong knew these routes as well as any American soldier. They had months to study them, to identify the choke points, to dig fighting positions in the tree lines and wait. A standard convoy had machine guns on the cab of the lead truck, maybe an M60 on a ring mount. Against a coordinated ambush, it wasn't enough. Convoys were being destroyed, drivers were dying, supplies weren't getting through. Someone in the 8th Transportation Group looked at the old Quad-50 in the Army inventory and asked a simple question. What happens if we put this on a truck? The answer, it turned out, changed the war on the road. Specialist 4 David Lemon was 21 years old when he was assigned as a Quad-50 gunner with the 523rd Transportation Company out of Quy Nhon in early 1967. He had not volunteered for the assignment. He had not been told what the weapon was when he arrived. His first look at the Quad-50 was standing in a motor pool at 600, looking at what appeared to be a truck with a weapons platform welded onto the bed. His sergeant, a veteran of 2 previous tours, said 4 words: "Don't waste single shots." The lesson was tactical. The Quad-50 was not a precision weapon. It was a suppression weapon, a machine designed to put an overwhelming volume of fire into a defined area in the shortest possible time. All 4 barrels fired simultaneously, linked through a single trigger assembly. At maximum sustained rate, it could put 2,400 rounds per minute into a target zone. At 50 meters, the beaten zone of all 4 barrels overlapping meant that Anything in an area roughly 3 meters wide and 2 meters tall was hit multiple times per second. At 200 meters, it could strip a tree line, not just suppress it, but physically destroy the vegetation along a 50-meter frontage faster than a man could comprehend what was happening. The NVA had a term for what happened when a Quad-50 opened up on an ambush position. There is no clean English translation. The closest approximation is the ground that kills. The gun truck program, which is what the modified convoy vehicles came to be called, grew rapidly through 1967 and into 1968. Different units built different configurations. Some mounted the Quad-50 on M54 5-ton trucks. Others used deuce-and-a-halves, reinforced with steel plating welded to the cab and the platform. The crews added their own armor as they went: sandbags, cut steel from destroyed vehicles, metal sheeting scavenged from fire bases. Every gun truck was slightly different, a field modification built by the men who depended on it to stay alive. The vehicles had names: Eve of Destruction, Ace of Spades, the Untouchable, Brutus. The names were painted on the cab large enough to read from a distance. This was not bravado, it was identification. When a convoy formed up in the staging area, every driver knew which truck carried the Quad-50 and where it sat in the column. That position in the order of march was everything. Too far forward and it would hit the kill zone before it could react. Too far back and the ambush would destroy the front of the convoy before the gun could traverse. The standard placement, third or fourth vehicle from the front, evolved through months of contact, adjusted after every ambush that went wrong. The NVA noticed the pattern and tried to adapt. Their initial response was to extend the kill zone forward, trying to destroy the first 6 or 7 vehicles simultaneously, and hope the gun truck was already burning before it could fire. It didn't work. The Quad-50 could traverse 360 degrees and reach targets the length of a football field in under 2 seconds. The only ambush geometry that neutralized it was one the NVA couldn't execute on a road: envelopment from above. They didn't have helicopters. The Quad-50 owned the tree line. By mid-1968, captured NVA documents and prisoner interrogations were telling a consistent story. NVA unit commanders along the major convoy routes had been instructed to identify whether a convoy carried a gun truck before committing to an ambush. If the column had a Quad-50, standing orders in at least 2 NVA regiments operating in the II Corps area were to let it pass. The mathematics were too punishing. A standard ambush company of 80 to 100 men could expect to absorb catastrophic casualties in the first 60 seconds of contact if the gun truck was operational and in position. The cost-benefit calculation, as brutal as it sounds, had shifted decisively. This was the detail that never made it into the press briefings at MACV headquarters in Saigon. The Army was not inclined to publicize that a fleet of improvised truck conversions, built partly from scavenged metal by enlisted soldiers, had effectively neutralized the NVA's primary tactic against logistics, a tactic that had been destroying convoys since 1965. The story didn't fit the available narrative. There was no single dramatic battle to point to. Just thousands of miles of road, and convoys that started arriving intact. The men who rode those gun trucks knew what was happening. They measured it in silences, ambushes that didn't come, tree lines that stayed quiet, the absence of the crack and thump that meant incoming rounds. You can't count the firefights that never happen. The Army's metrics didn't know how to record a deterrence that worked. Specialist Lemon survived his tour. He came home in late 1967 with no citation, no formal recognition for his time on the Quad-50. In interviews conducted years later by Vietnam War oral history projects, he described the weapon the same way every gun truck veteran described it: loud enough to feel it in your chest, even with hearing protection. He said that after the first time he fired in contact, a brief, violent ambush on a mountain pass north of An Kee, he understood why the sergeant had given him that instruction on the first day. Don't waste single shots. You don't fire a Quad-50 at one man. You fire it at a tree line. You fire it until the tree line stops firing back. Captured NVA after-action reports from operations along Highway 19 in 1968 described the Quad-50 in terms that required no translation to understand. One document, recovered after a failed ambush north of the Nki Pass, described the weapon as producing a wall of fire that moved. The NVA company commander who wrote the report had been the one man in his unit who made it back to the assembly point. He recommended in the report that ambush operations against convoys carrying the weapon be suspended until a countertactic could be developed. No countertactic was ever developed. The Quad-50 stayed on the road. If you were a truck driver in Vietnam, or if your father was, if you ran those convoys on Highway 19 or Highway 1, or the dirt tracks through the highlands, you may have known about the gun truck without knowing its full history. Drop a comment below. These men built something out of scrap metal and necessity that the Army never fully acknowledged, and their story deserves to be heard in full. The gun truck program was officially disbanded after American ground forces began withdrawing in 1971. The vehicles were left behind or stripped for parts. The Quad-50s went back into storage. Some of the crews tried to document what they had done, the mileage, the contacts, the convoys that arrived. Most of the records are incomplete. The Army gave the gun truck program 2 paragraphs in the official logistics history of the Vietnam War. The NVA gave it more attention than that. For the soldiers who rode in those vehicles, through the ambushes and the long silent nights on mountain roads, it wasn't strategy. It wasn't history. It was just the truck behind them, and the sound they never wanted to hear go quiet. History gave them a footnote. They deserved a chapter.